Hey folks, David Stewart here. Hope you guys are having a great day. I'd like to talk about today the brand new Fire Emblem game out on the Nintendo Switch, which is Fire Emblem Engage. And rather than giving a full workup of the game where I talk about every single aspect and critique it, I really just want to focus on one very important aspect, especially in relation to previous entries in the series, and that is the characters. Because I think the characters are the weakest link in the new Fire Emblem game. I think they're a big miss, and I want to talk about why this failure to make good characters really impacts the enjoyment of the story. So you've heard me say before that characters sell the story. There are three elements to every story: setting, characters, and plot. Setting is the world that the characters inhabit, the time they inhabit. The characters act out the plot. So characters are very essential. If characters are unlikable, then readers may quit reading a book or quit watching a movie. If characters are very likable, they can sell even a fairly weak plot and they will make up for a lot of weaknesses in the setting. Characters are important. What's the problem with the characters in Fire Emblem Engage? Well, let's start with the first element that's a problem, which is their aesthetics. I don't know who was designing these characters, but these are some of the worst character designs I've seen in any Fire Emblem game. They look like VTubers. Somebody said this on the live stream. It looks like VTuber Engage. Now, I don't watch a lot of VTubers, but this makes sense to me because so many of them have like cat ears and shark outfits and things like that. Things that are completely bizarre looking. They are designed to look very busy and very strange for entertainment purposes. The problem is that Fire Emblem is a game that's about war and battle. So these character designs look absolutely ridiculous in context. You have a girl who looks like she's about to join a parade in Carnival, who somehow is a high defense spear user. You have characters wearing bows and dresses into battle, characters with stars and hearts on their faces, their hair shaped into hearts, roses all over their dresses, bare skin, strange veils. All of it just seems so cartoonish. It's difficult to take the game seriously looking at the graphics. And this is especially in contrast to the NPCs and the enemies who are wearing normal looking battle attire, at least within the realm of normal design. Of course, one of the worst designs of the bunch is the main character, Allier, and his or her dual colored red and blue hair with dual colored red and blue eyes, in an outfit that's just far too busy. In fact, all the outfits in this game are just far too busy. There's too many details. There's too many things going on. You have characters with flowers on top of their hair, butterflies in her hair, strange lace covering up her chest, bows all over the dress. It's so much detail that you can't actually get an idea of what the character is supposed to look like. There's no general communication of the character's traits through their design. And that's, I guess, the big weak point, is that there's also a divorce between the aesthetics of the characters and who they are. Those things don't go together. It's like each design was done in a vacuum to look as unique and strange as possible, while the personality behind it has no relation to any part of the design. The exceptions to this are Hortensia, who is obsessed with looking cute, and her outfit kind of goes along with that, with Lolita Japanese subculture, and then the two armored units, Jade and Louis, who look like knights and act like knights. Their personalities and their outfits go together, and their outfits look like they have a function that's related to their class function. All of this is in stark contrast to even the most flamboyant designs of the past, which focused on one or two important details rather than having many details that the viewer had to take in. And the thing is, in this game with the emblem rings, you can see all of the past designs of the characters from other games, and they look so good in comparison to what you see with the characters for Fire Emblem Engage. The stark contrast is right there on the screen for you to see. The presence of these older designs obliterates any idea that there's a cohesive artistic direction to the game at all. Every new character seems to have been designed ad hoc with absolutely no reference to any of the other aesthetics in the game at all. So in summary, the bad character designs actually stopped me from enjoying the game as much as I otherwise would have. I really enjoyed the gameplay, but every time there were characters talking to each other, they just looked so silly, it disrupted any kind of dramatic flow that might have occurred in any scene. And like I said, the designs don't really tell us anything about the characters. They don't help us to get to know them in any way. Now, even really bad character designs could be used to tell a great story. The problem is that there's not a great story to tell in Fire Emblem Engage, and one of the big reasons is that the characters just aren't very compelling. Most of the characters are very shallow, they're very boring. Even when you get deep into support conversations, they don't reveal anything particularly interesting about them. Now, what they did with the characters is an approach to making characters that I don't think is bad at all and has been really effective in previous entries into the series and can be very effectively used when working in other media such as books or comics or movies. And that is, every character has something quirky about them that shows up whenever they say or do something. You may have a character who likes to bake. Well, he's going to talk about baking sometimes. The problem with Fire Emblem Engage is that that's all the characters are for the most part. There's very few characters that have any sort of deeper layer to their personality. You have a character that's all about tea. You have a character that's all about watching other characters interact. You have a character that likes to eat street food, and every support conversation is about eating food. You have a character who's obsessed with working out. Every conversation's about working out. If you look at past games, all the characters had these elements. You had a clumsy maid, for instance, but these were always the starting points to support conversations, not the meat of them. The meat of the conversation wasn't about the quirk of the character, but that quirk of the character allowed them to begin a conversation with another character that revealed other aspects of their personality or allowed them to say things which made them likable or endearing. There are very few conversations like that in Fire Emblem Engage. The characters are drawn very flamboyantly, but have very flat personalities to go with that. All of the conversations read as though they were written by an inexperienced writer, like a student was given a task to write a conversation between somebody who likes fishing and somebody who likes reading, and so that's what the characters talk about, is fishing and reading. Most of the characters don't have much of a backstory to uncover. They just sort of exist as a static, quirky background character that you can maybe interact with to hear about whatever quirky thing they're interested in. That's not to say that there are no entertaining or good support conversations, but most of them are pretty shallow. Even when you get up to higher support levels like A or B, it's really unlikely you're going to uncover anything very interesting about the characters at all. And there are precious few exceptions to this. Now, one of the reasons that I think the characters fall flat is actually because the setting is very shallow in this game. Remember, they're setting, characters, and plot. The characters live in the setting. If you were to compare it to something like Fire Emblem Three Houses, where you have a politically complex environment full of nobles and peasants and cities and make-believe cultures and a religion that binds everything together, you have a lot more opportunity for characters to have depth, to have opinions about the way the world works, to come from circumstances that are more interesting than just their quirk. You have a character in Fire Emblem Three Houses who's a former opera singer, but is going to an officer's academy, mainly because she wants to find a husband, because she realizes that divas expire. You have characters who've been adopted into noble families because the noble family wants to use them to gain prestige and power because of their crest that they were born with. All of these things have a depth that's given to the characters by the setting itself. And because Fire Emblem Engage has a really shallow setting, there's 4 different kingdoms, I think, and you don't really explore much about any of them. 3 of them are on good terms. 1 is not on good terms, but there's not very many maps in each one. There's a couple of scenes from each kingdom, and you just kind of fall through the plot at a breakneck speed without gaining any kind of understanding about what these countries are, what their culture's like. Even the cultures are painted with very broad strokes. You have a kingdom of strength and a kingdom that worships an evil dragon, and you have a kingdom in the desert, and none of them really has a whole lot going on politically. So when there's not that much to the setting, there's really not going to be that much to the characters either. And lastly, there's the problem with the plot. It's just not a very interesting or compelling plot. The plot exists more or less to shuffle the player through various set pieces and present them with various challenges. And the characters just sort of act out that plot without a whole lot of thought to motivations. The plot is also made up of things we've seen before in the series, and I saw every major twist coming a mile ahead. So that's partly me as a writer being experienced with how these things are written and knowing what kind of plot twists writers tend to write, and also what kind of plot twists have existed in these games in the past. And we just don't see anything very interesting in that regard in this game. So, characters bind everything together. They sell the story. If the characters don't really care about executing the plot, you're not going to care that much about the plot as the player, the person experiencing the story. If the setting's very shallow, the characters aren't going to have very much to say. They're not going to have a lot of depth to be revealed. And if the characters' personalities are shallow on their own and their designs are bizarre, you're not really going to care about enjoying the little visual novel support conversations that they put into Fire Emblem games. I found myself just wanting to skip most of them. And the last thing I'll touch on in regard to the characters are the English voice actors. I played most of this game in English, and I can say that I'm not a fan of the English voice actors, particularly the voice actor for Allier. Most of the males, in fact, sound rather effeminate and high-voiced. All the male characters sound like they're from West Hollywood. All the female characters sound like they're from California. The performances are mostly flat and unemotional. This is very much the case for the voice actor for Allier, the male version, which I played, and he sounds like he's bored in the recording booth, like he's bored reading the lines, or he's reading them as flatly and robotically as possible. Truly a bad performance. And so the acting doesn't really help sell the characters, and the characters don't really help sell the story. So the main thing that binds the whole Fire Emblem game together is the story that links all of the various set pieces and links all of the game mechanics together. It's just not very good with this release. I will say, though, in parting, that the gameplay is very good. So overall, I would actually recommend the game because I think it's really fun to play, not because I think the story or the characters are interesting. The visual novel aspects of the game are probably the worst I've seen in a Fire Emblem game, but the gameplay is still really solid. It's really a well-polished game. In general, it looks good other than the bizarre character designs. And overall, I found enough challenge on hard mode to make it worth my while to play. So check it out and leave me your thoughts down below in the comments section. I'll see you all next time. Make sure you're on my list at dvspress.com/list. I will be releasing a new story for free via my mailing list, so make sure you're on it if you want to grab that. And my newest book is called Afterglow Generation Y, a collection of short stories about my generation. So check that out, and I will see you all next time.